What is going on, everybody, and welcome to episode number 15? 14 of the Talkin ATL Hawks podcast. Now, this is going to be just a little shorter than usual just because today's got a little busy, but I'm going to, without further ado, we're going to hop right into this episode because I'm sure, there's no way, even if you're not even a sports fan, there's no way you haven't seen the news that broke out just last night. Probably the craziest trade in the history of the NBA.
Sports in general. I'd say sports in general, honestly.
Just you're right, Jordan. Just in general, just sports in general. It involved Luka getting traded to the Lakers and involved AD going to Dallas. Now, there were a couple more assets to that trade. We're going to break that down in just a little bit. We're going to set that aside for just a little bit because, this is obviously an Atlanta Hawks first podcast. So to open up this episode, the trade deadline is this Thursday. So by the time you see this episode, it'll be like a couple days until the trade deadline happens. And if you don't know what's going on with the Atlanta Hawks right now, this is a complete travesty, a complete disaster. Coming off the back-to-back losses to Toronto, both games at home, the Hawks lost a battle in Minnesota, 192. We lost a home game, an almost fantastic fourth quarter comeback against the Rockets, 100-96. That was the makeup game from the snow day that happened in Atlanta.
Which, by the way, is Dylan Brooks. He needs to chill out and stop getting so freaky on the court.
That is very true. We'll get into all that though. And then we went to Cleveland, which we usually beat, and we let them drop 137 on us. We lost that game 137-115.
Very nice 30-point game from Zachary, though.
And then
almost perfect shooting.
Just last night, we lost to Indiana 132-127. Now, you're seeing a common theme in these past couple games. Outside of the Cleveland one, they're very close games, but a big problem for the Hawks, especially in the Timberwolves and the Rockets game, is offensive efficiency is just not there anymore. And the reason being, we talked about this not just the last episode, but really the past couple episodes, is that the injuries the Hawks are facing right now has been detrimental to our chemistry, especially on the offense side of the ball. And this previous week, or this week, of these games, like last week, the games we're about to cover, the Hawks fans got some heartbreaking news that's really just going to change the course of the season. It's really going to change what the Hawks are going to do here at the trade deadline.
It already has.
Jalen Johnson is getting season-ending shoulder surgery on his right shoulder. Meaning, because when Jalen Johnson got injured in the Raptors game that we went to, there was no timetable.
We all watched it happen live.
We did. We watched it live, and we talked about it last episode. We said because the Hawks came out and labeled the injury or his timetable as – what's the word for it? What was the word?
Out indefinitely? Out indefinitely?
Indefinitely, yes. They listed him out as indefinitely, which we talked about last episode, which means the injury is worse than we thought. But I don't think we thought it was going to be so bad that we weren't going to see him again this year.
Well, I think we definitely knew the idea was possible, especially because we're on the brink of All-Star weekend. And if the injury is that crucial where it takes that extended evaluation, you kind of already know in the back of your head that it's either going to be severe enough where we won't see him until it's too late, or we're just not going to see him at all. But like Chase mentioned and kind of alluded to earlier, it has pushed the initiative for the Hawks front office to make some kind of move, something significant. I'm talking about Brandon Ingram, significant, that the Hawks are intensely trying to push getting Brandon Ingram out of New Orleans into Atlanta to fill the void that Jalen Johnson left at the power forward position, which now that Dyson Daniels is back and Zachary's back in full effect, just had a phenomenal game in Cleveland.
47 points his last two games.
Talked about earlier. And Trae Young, of course, getting back and healthy. He just had like a 38-16 game against the Pacers, even though we lost. Hit some very clutch threes in the fourth quarter. So the Hawks' offense efficiency is getting back in rhythm, but the lack of Jalen Johnson has it's been a punch in the gut. It really has. And it kind of took away every ounce of momentum the Hawks were building before a 7-game losing streak. So the Hawks have to know that if a trade like Brandon Ingram is not made before the trade deadline, then this season is screwed. We are quite literally screwed if we do not fill that void somehow. And I think the only significant way to do so is to get Brandon Ingram in Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know, like, I think that is the trade that's most likely would happen, even though, like, it wouldn't make sense for New Orleans to do that, considering like how he fleeced him with the Murray trade, and Murray, who's also out with the season, the torn Achilles, I believe. I think it's a torn Achilles.
This is the second season-ending injury DeJounte Murray has suffered. So RIP to that, man.
Yeah, and and like that's definitely heartbreaking. But like, I mean, like now that we also have a season-ending injury, I don't know how to feel. I mean, like maybe it's a bit karma-ish, I guess. I don't know. Even though like Jalen, I guess even though like we knew about Jalen's injury before Murray's, but I mean like. I would be shocked if we somehow trade for Brandon Ingram, even though it's very possible. I would be shocked if the Falcons make a trade with us like that again. But
I mean, to be honest, this kind of worked out in it as a perfect storm for the Atlanta Hawks. Because, heading into this season, there was the big question, who are the Hawks going to keep? DeJounte Murray or Trae Young? Well, obviously, the Hawks made the right decision in getting rid of DeJounte and keeping Trae. But when DeJounte went to New Orleans, it was supposed to be like a good thing for both teams. Because this was supposed to be like a big trio year for the Pelicans. Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, DeJounte Murray. But I saw something crazy that I didn't even realize, but not a single one of the not one game this year. Not one game this year has all three of them shared the court together. Because Zion's been battling his personality, weight, and injury issues. Brandon Ingram has been battling injury. And, of course, Murray not only broke his arm earlier in the year, which took him like a month or two to recover from, but now he's out for the year, like you said, with a torn Achilles. But this kind of – it's very, very unfortunate for New Orleans. But what kind of makes us fortunate for Atlanta is because obviously we're struggling with injuries – not as bad as New Orleans, but still really bad. So these are now two teams that need to make a big move at the deadline. And I think the Pelicans are in a vulnerable spot right now. I think they are going to be willing to get rid of Brandon Ingram, because if you compare the future of the Hawks for up against the future of New Orleans, the Hawks, they have a nice paveway to a bright future, while New Orleans is kind of just scrambling for some kind of response because Zion has just not worked out. Brandon Ingram's getting to the door is closing for Brandon Ingram's time in New Orleans. And then, of course, DeJounte Murray. This is his first year in New Orleans, but, no telling how he's going to be when he comes off for injury. So I think what New Orleans is going to aim to do is ship Brandon Ingram and hope to get some key pieces that can sustain them right now. And oh boy, do the Hawks have a package we can send in.
Well, it's not about.
Let me mention the package real quick, brother. Bogdanovich and Clint Capella.
Right, yeah, they haven't been playing because they're currently not with the team.
Not with the team, which if you know anything about trade deadline, every time that person is not with the team, that means the front office is in deep talks with them.
Well, you said a lot, Chase. You said a lot there. But I think the main thing that we need to take away is what you said about the Pelicans' vulnerability, because it's not like you're sitting there comparing futures. I don't think it has anything to do with that at all. I think what the Pelicans are concerned about right now is because they've already hit the reset button. Even with Zion Williamson being there, even with Brandon Ingram being there, even with DeJounte Murray being there, none of those three players has are viewed by the Pelicans front office as guys that are going to stabilize their franchise.
Ooh.
Those 3 players right there, the Pelicans knew going to the season that those 3 players right there are only platoon guys.
Oh, absolutely not.
There was no way whatsoever anybody in that arena, anybody wearing a Pelicans jersey, anybody in the Pelicans front office thought for a minute that DeJounte Murray, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson were going to stick together. Those are just platoon guys. The Pelicans, heading into the season, knew that the reset button was going to be pressed this year, and they were just platoon guys.
I think that's crazy.
But what sucks now for the Pelicans is because we already knew Zion Williamson's getting traded. That guy's going somewhere. He's not going to be on the Pelicans by the end of this year.
Who's going to want him?
Well, someone's going to want him, not for a big contract, but it doesn't matter anymore because he's going to be ineligible for his big contract.
Bless their heart.
Since he hasn't played any games. So it actually kind of works out for the team that's going to be trading for him because they're not going to have to pay him any money because he hasn't played the amount of games that deems his contract to be eligible. Brandon Ingram, well, I mean, we already know he's getting shipped off potentially to Atlanta if, the good Lord shines upon us. And DeJounte Murray, well, nobody's going to trade for him now because he's injured. But DeJounte Murray was never going to sign an extension there anyways. Once his 2-year contract's up, he's done. He's leaving. This is just kind of like a restabilizing state right now for DeJounte Murray. But
that's a good trio, though. If they could have stayed healthy this year, that's a good trio.
It's like the trio that was in Brooklyn. Like it's
not even close.
No, what I mean, I'm not comparing the two like play style, but I'm saying on paper it seems like a pretty penny, but in reality, there's no way they're all 3 going to be sustained together on the court at the same time. It just can't happen. The state of Zion Williamson, the state of Brandon Ingram, the state of DeJounte Murray, there's no way. No possible way you can expect that trio to hold together. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. But it works out, aside from the season-ending injury, it works out in a weird way for the Pelicans' favor because they can use these platoon guys to build for the future. And why that Brandon Ingram trade is so possible for the Hawks is because, Bogey and Capella, they can ship him over anywhere. But all the Pelicans really want is draft picks. That is all they want because their eyes are dead set on the future. That is the only thing that concerns New Orleans right now. And the Hawks have draft picks that they can send over to New Orleans that we got in that trade for DeJounte Murray, that we got in that trade for what's his face? I can't remember.
That guy.
But regardless, we previous trades have led to this moment for that Hawks can use to get a guy like Brandon Ingram and save our season. Save our season. That is the Hawks' concern right now. It's to save the season, and we can utilize the Pelicans' weakness to get Brandon Ingram, or not weakness, but their state of the franchise right now to get Brandon Ingram. So I think this trade is very, very possible, and I think that's kind of why it's been heating up over the last few days with the DeJounte Murray injury.
Joyner, what's your thoughts on this whole fiasco?
Well, talking about draft picks, the only pick we have this year is the Lakers pick, right here.
Yeah.
And when we're gonna be talking about later on in a few minutes, that might be a bad pick.
Picks are not a plenty for the Hawks.
Well, I'm talking about future picks.
That might be that's gonna be like a late 20s pick guaranteed.
Yep.
Oh, I'm just talking about later picks. We have a handful of 28 and 29 picks.
Oh, yeah.
But the Pelicans will be thirsty for because they like I said, they're pressing that reset button, which they need to. The Pelicans need to stop trying to make something work. They do. I'd say 2 years ago they needed to, man.
They made the playoffs.
The moment Zion Williamson decided to eat rather than play, I'd be like, all right, this kid's got to go.
So 2027, New Orleans will receive the more favorable of its 2027 first-round pick, and Milwaukee's 2027 first-round pick, and Atlanta will receive the less favorable pick of the two. Protections for the selections of 1 through 4. If this pick fails within the protected range and is therefore not conveyable, then New Orleans' commitment to Atlanta will be lifted, and New Orleans will instead receive both picks via New Orleans.
And I also think we can all agree, since we're on the topic of Clint Capella moving on, because we've seen Okongwu in the starting role at the center spot since that game against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. And then we've all knew this time was coming. This is Okongwu's team now when it comes to the big man spot. But the reason why I am so comfortable of letting go of Clint Capella is because Muhammad Gay has been getting more and more minutes as the season progresses, and that kid is something special.
Didn't he start against Indiana or something like that?
Yeah, he started in the game against the Rockets. And he had his first career start against Houston. And he also played a lot of minutes in that Minnesota game. And his size and quickness is so underrated when you're watching his game because he is able to make defensive plays against, top finishers like Anthony Edwards or Jalen Green for the Rockets that Clint Capella could not make on an average point guard. Well, and dude, in his, like I said, his size and quickness is something Clint Capella's lacking, which his age does have a lot to do with it. Kudos to the Hawks organization, though, because they planned this out perfectly in terms of big men. Because remember back when the Hawks first got Clint Capella, and this is prior to Onyeka Okongwu. This is back when Bruno Fernando was still the fan favorite. But then we eventually drafted Onyeka Okongwu to be the next man up in terms of Hawks big men. And then right after they got Onyeka Okongwu, they drafted Muhammad Gay, which he had an insane draft combine that year and yet still fell in the draft board. So that was instantly a steal for the Hawks. So why they had the pairing of Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu in the league, they had Muhammad Gay growing in the G League in College Park, and he was dominating. If you look at his numbers, not just last year, but this year before getting called up, he was posting insane numbers as a G League big man. So now seeing the same Clint Capella getting up there in age, not being the aggressive big man he once was, that puts Okongwu in his place, and now we'll have Gay right behind him, and he'll be getting ready to be the next man up. And guess what we're seeing that with as well? Keaton Wallace. We are prepping Keaton Wallace to be the main point guard for this team when Trae Young's time is done. But I think we have to move on because while we do want to break down a Luka trade, Jordan, I'm gonna throw to you.
We're not joking.
Before we even get into that, there is one more travesty that we have to talk about. And Jordan, I want you to open this up. You know what's coming. Right? It happened again. Jordan, second straight year. In terms of Trae Young, what happened again?
Oh yeah.
It took a minute to kick in.
I don't know why the NBA hates him. He's just a villain. But before I say that, I'm not surprised. Not just because the NBA hates him, but
what should I do?
LaMelo Ball is also snubbed. And he's probably the best point guard in the league right now.
Sabonis was also stuffed.
Yes, but LaMelo Ball is averaging more points, rebounds, and assists than every point guard in the East, and he's also snubbed. So I don't think that the NBA is. I think that the NBA is also taking in team success, which doesn't make sense because this isn't a team because this is like individual players.
Yep, I have a problem with that theory though.
But the Hornets are a really bad team this season. They only have like 13, 14 wins. We're doing better. And also doing better than even though we've been like playing like crap the past 7-8 games, but I mean, like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised of the fact that Trae Young got some. That's because the NBA doesn't like him. That's because he's the league villain, which we all know and love. But it's because like other people have gotten snubbed too, like LaMelo Ball, Sabonis, like y'all mentioned. And also comes down to team success, and we all know this. Like the Hornets franchise is terrible.
Probably the worst thing I've ever seen in sports.
Michael Jordan couldn't even say that team. It's like he probably made that team worse. Let's be honest. He made that team worse.
I do want to step in and say I have a problem with the theory about taking team success into consideration. Not like I'm saying you're wrong, Jordan, because I think that definitely went into consideration. But if that was the case, why was Damian Lillard in the past? Because Damian Lillard has been a part of a lot of bad Portland teams. Why was he always, every single year, a consistent all-star? And I'm not saying he didn't deserve it because he most definitely did. But if that's the case, why is Trae getting that same treatment? Because Trae Young's numbers this year surpassed Damian Lillard's numbers like 4 years ago when the Trailblazers were like 17 games under 500. But they didn't have any problem giving Damian Lillard an all-star spot. So why is Trae not getting that treatment? And Trae Young is the first player to average 20 points per game and 10 assists per game and not be an all-star in multiple seasons. And I think Trae Young put it perfectly. After this whole thing went down and Trae found out about it and it reached social media, he went out on X and said, it's no longer getting snubbed. He said it's getting trade at this point. And I think it's hilarious because it's true. Yeah. Because it's true. There is nothing. Trae Young is doing things that we haven't seen since Magic Johnson. But there is nothing. And it's not like his shooting percentage is bad. His shooting percentage is better than 4 players who got picked over him. His shooting percentage is 44%.
And I think there's TNT was kind of talking about this when they were revealing the All-Star game, and someone else was talking about this. I can't remember who it was, but I think one of the bigger problems about the recent, because I mean, we haven't seen snubs like this. Well, we've seen snubs like this in like the past 4 or 5 All-Star games, but
when Zaza Pachulia got snubbed.
But yeah, obviously. But in the earlier days, like the early 2010s, 2000s, 90s era, no one ever complained about snubs like this. And I think one of the reasons is, and I think no, well, yes, but not what I was going to say. I think one of the things that the NBA is starting to run into is that it's turned into a more the most offensive it's ever been. The now NBA, we have never seen this amount of offense in basketball than today's NBA game. And what it's done is it has created more stars in the NBA. In the recent years, we haven't seen this amount of stars like we're seeing in this NBA. And I think so. It's not necessarily the NBA's fault because they're at a point where every year there's going to be a really bad snub. So what the TNT crew was kind of suggesting, and I think this is a great idea,
fire Adam Silver.
No. So if we know Adam Silver, well, if you don't know, this year's All-Star game, Adam Silver introduced a new format, which I think is really smart.
Like he does every year.
Well, because it follows the the NHL's format. The NHL's All-Star game works. There's 4 separate teams, and they do kind of a bracket style. That's what the NBA is doing this year. They're going to break the All-Stars into 4 teams, and they're going to do a bracket style. And if this goes well, if this turns out to be a positive in the All-Star game, this will open the door for the NBA to add more All-Stars to the All-Star game and just expand the 4 teams. But here's the thing, because you kind of have to at this point, because there's it's almost like, I guess I'm going to compare it this way. It's like what college football did with the 12-team format. Because ever since introducing the 14 format, I know this is random. I'm just bringing up college football, but I think it's a good comparison. When the college football introduced the 14 format, they ran into an issue where every single year there were a lot of snubs. There were a lot of teams that were unhappy. So what they did was they expanded it to 12 teams to create more room and less controversy. If the NBA – because the NHL does this, the NHL has more All-Star selections than listen, have more All-Star selections than the NBA. They have to because there's 4 different teams, and then they do the 4-team face-off, and the fans love it. The NHL All-Star game is popular. If the NBA can do the exact same thing, it creates more All-Stars, less controversy, and more fun. Everybody's happy.
I understand what you're saying,
and it caters to the fans and the players.
I understand what you're saying. But the reason why I don't like it is because it's going to take away I don't even know what the right word is. But it's going to take away the honor of being named.
Why is it not the case in the NHL? The NHL has way more All-Star selections than the NBA.
Why is there not like a significant amount more? But I also think the NHL also has more players. So I think that kind of –
well, I mean, that's where you're confused. I'm not saying, like, make it like a substantial amount of more players, just a little more. Imagine if they added, like, 1 more player to each team. Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, Sabonis, and who's another really big snub?
Jalen Johnson. Well, I mean, before season.
Let's just say Jalen Johnson. That is 4 big players that should be in the All-Star game. That's just 4 more players, less controversy, more fun.
Again, I do think we have to move on now because we are kind of running out of time. But I'm gonna let Joyner start this off because I think the end of this podcast definitely needs to be surfaced around what went on not even 24 hours ago. John, what the crap happened last night?
So last night I was watching a WWE event. It ended around like 11:30, so I was just on my phone like scrolling through Twitter.
He was watching Asha Speed.
No,
get clapped in the
right. Yeah.
He was watching Kai Cenat crash out over John Cena's elimination.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I actually was, but yeah. So I was watching that, and then I see a Shams tweet. And I was like, okay, sweet, a trade. First time I was like, Luke. I was like, okay, he must have got hacked. So
he had like clean his glasses.
People saying like, no way. Shams got hacked. And I was like, yeah, okay, if Shams stuff got hacked, I refresh. I see a double down. He doubled down on it. He said, no, I was not hacked. This is 100% real. Luka has been traded to the Lakers, the best market team in the NBA, the Los Angeles Lakers, for the full trade. Hold on, I'll pull up the full trade.
Yeah, give all the deets.
The full trade. The Dallas Mavericks are trading Luka Doncic, Max Kleber, and Markieff Morris to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a 2029 first-round pick. And they also included Jalen Jafino to Utah to make to help out the finances. And Chase left the podcast now, so count on Chase for that.
He actually had a valid reason. He'll be back. His AirPod died, so he can't hear you anymore. So he has to go he's standing over there. He's just got to charge it for a little bit so he can come back.
Okay,
but that's okay. We'll one-on-one this for now.
Yeah, but so no one saw this coming. You can't even make this trade in 2K. You can't even trade Luka in 2K. You can't trade for him in 2K. This is insane. Like I don't know how and apparently the Mavericks did it because of, and get this, conditioning and weight problems. And who is another player that we on a previous team that we mentioned? He has weight problems. Zion Williamson. New Orleans. Why haven't you traded Zion?
Look, this will go down as the worst trade in the history of sports.
It's not will, it is. It already is.
It got so bad and so out of hand that football players, I'm not talking about football, I'm talking about football players from the Premier League who has nothing to do with the NBA even took to social media because even they knew how stupid of a trade.
Because Luka's an international star. He's not just a U.S. star. He is an international star.
Let me tell you this. Mavericks general manager Nico Harrison, count your days, buddy. Count your days because you have decided to put on your big boy pants, take a leap of faith. I wouldn't even call this a leap of faith. I think this is a leap of I don't even know. This is just a leap. This is just you jumping off a building. That's what it kind of feels like. It kind of feels like Liam Payne. You know what I mean? Just like it's just
whoa, that was insane.
I don't get that.
That was crazy. Oh my gosh. I apologize to everybody who just heard that. That was so out of pocket.
Rest in peace, Liam Payne. But what I mean by this is there's just no point to this. And if this doesn't work out like everybody already knows it's not going to, the city of Dallas is going to be lit on fire. Well,
no, it's probably already burned to the ground by now.
And you know what? It deserves to be.
The boys started that like last night at midnight when the trade happened.
It's not like the trade itself is bad enough because it already is, but it's freaking Nico Harrison's way of explaining and justifying the trade that makes it so much worse. And he's over here telling the press, I believe that defense wins championships. Congratulations. You're absolutely right. Get yourself a better big man, but don't trade away the best player in the whole entire league for a guy that you're going to be lucky to have healthy by playoff time.
Yeah, that's the thing. And like he mentioned, he's like, well, calm down, Dallas fans. This puts us in a win now situation. And they're like, Kyrie and AD is going to be such a nasty pairing together. They're going to play like a combination of 9 games together. AD stubs his pinky toe and he's out for 3 months. Like, there's no shot he's going to last long enough to win you a championship. And you know what I want to happen? I really want this to happen. I want the Lakers to eliminate the Mavericks in the playoffs. Nothing was saddest.
It's gonna happen.
And you know what? I feel so bad. We love to make fun of Cowboys fans, but really think about this. The Dallas fans are having to deal with Jerry Jones and this Mavericks ownership. And here's the thing. This is in the words of Mark Cuban. Now, keep in mind, Mark Cuban is deeply involved in Dallas. Mark Cuban had a very important role to play in this trade process. He's
not only the majority owner, he's a minority owner, so he's not involved with the basketball operation.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, he's just on Shark Tank.
Oh, well, I'm going to throw this quote out anyways. I think it's hilarious. This is what he said in 2022. He said, if I had to choose between my wife and keeping Luka on the Mavs, catch me at my lawyer's office prepping for a divorce. Well, buddy, I hate to tell you, those words meant absolutely nothing to the Dallas organization because it's not like Lakers were like, hey, I know we're asking for a lot. Can we have Luka? No. Dallas went to LA. Yeah. They offered Luka.
They put him on a silver platter.
And you know what? I'm just going to say this. This is going to be my final statements about this. Screw you, Dallas, because the Hawks won the Trae Young Luka trade.
Hey. You know what, Jason? You weren't going to say I was going to say that. Because they gave up on their franchise guy a lot easier than we did.
They did.
We still have Trae Young, and yeah. So,
but we do have to go because I know about to leave for Kennesaw. Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. So sorry we had to cut this a little short. We'll get more into this on the later episodes.
I'm sure more news will probably be revealed about it.
Oh, well, by the time we record, trade deadline's going to be over. So I'm
actually planning on going live on Instagram, on our Instagram page for the trade deadline. Since I won't have class around when all those trades will be going down. So I'll be going live and reviewing and stuff. So whenever if you don't have class on Thursday, and you want to hop on live with me, y'all can, we can discuss what's going on with the trade deadline and stuff.
We'll see when that time comes. But in the meantime, I'm Chase. This is Andrew. We got Joyner here, and all I can say is pray for Brandon Ingram.
And pray for the Dallas GM,
the city of Dallas.
He's not surviving the rest of the season. Or what? He's gonna get shot somewhere.
Count your days, man.
It's over,
Count
bro.
your days.